Hey guys, it's Rachel.
And Sharon.
And welcome back to Never Did Run True. It's March. Happy March.
I mean, this will be the second episode in March probably, but it's fine.
It'll be the first.
No, I thought the other one we were going to do that we just talked about.
Oh. This is either the first or second episode.
It's in March. Well, not including the heated rivalry.
Yeah. You're welcome. You guys are getting a lot of us in your feeds. A lot. Never mind. Never mind. So, do you know what March is?
Women's History Month.
It is.
A new one.
The second worst month of the year, followed only by February.
How
Not because of
dare
Women's
you?
History Month. I know it's your birth month. I know.
As of recording a week from yesterday, and as of publishing, who knows?
Yeah. But it's awful. It's not cold enough to be frozen, and it rains all the time. But you can't go outside.
I love
You
rain.
love rain.
It's perfect for me.
So it fits right in. Maybe that's why you love it. You spent your first year of life, or first month of life, listening to it and going, oh, this is so nice. So yes, Women's History Month and Sharon's birth month. So that makes March wonderful, even though it's awful. Gosh, I can't remember if we've done it 2 years in a row or just one. We did
general feminism.
and then I think we did actual women's history.
Was it women's history or women's empowerment? We've done a lot. We like women. We're strong, independent women.
Sometimes.
We try to be.
We've tried to touch on it, I think, every March, I guess would be the point of my story. Was I think we've tried to celebrate in some way. So this year I was like, okay, how do we want to do this? And for some unknown reason, women's suffrage just popped into my head. There's no correlation between 1924 and today, right? Like, that's crazy. And then I started reading, and by reading, I mean, like, there's countless books written on this. I read 2 websites. I'm not saying I'm an expert. And there was so much that, like, I don't want to say I got bored, but, like, I got overwhelmed and I was like, is there a more simplified version of this? And I found it.
And then you created an even more simplified
I did. I got, like, as simple as you can get while hopefully still understanding the basics, because it's more... There's a ladybug in my hand. It smells. I hate these things. They're coming out. See? March. Ugh. Anyway, it's a really complicated topic, and I feel like in school it was just like, and then suddenly women could vote, and we're happy about that. It's all good. Just be happy.
Or it wasn't really mentioned.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't actually remember that. The main thing I remember is like the pictures of women with signs. Like that's I don't really
Votes
even remember.
for women.
Yeah, that much. So I guess we'll just kind of dive in, and I'm sure I'm gonna have like holes in my knowledge, but that's okay. So, my thought process was, okay, you have women's empowerment, let's just say in general. What does that mean? Like, equal rights, right? But, like, what are those rights? And that's how I came with voting rights, rights to education, rights to marriage.
equal pay.
We're
still working on that
bodily autonomy, like, things like that are necessary to be equal. Like, you can't just be like, well, yeah, it's the same when it's not the same. Luckily, in my opinion, for the most part, voting is equal right now. Like, you cannot be turned away at the polls for being a woman. Yay. But why is that? So, let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
The United States was formed in
It's like, how far?
So, but actually, it's kind of interesting because when the United States was formed, lots of different people came over, right? And we've got, like, our pilgrims who were actually, like, puritanical, which means they were, like, as rigid could be. But then they weren't the only ones that came over. And not everyone who came over were, like, I own women. Women are property.
Sure.
They're worthless unless they're with a man.
We don't appreciate it.
Yeah, no, we don't condone that sort of thinking. But their value was seen at different parts in U.S. history because of, well, okay, if you're settling a frontier, you have a man and a woman, presumably going by themselves. Like, the woman has to be as able as the man, or else that frontier is going to fail. Like, you can't just have women who sit on pretty houses and look out windows and sigh dramatically. Like, you have to have productive women. You have to have women who are able to run the home while the husband's gone for 4 or 5 days to market, whatever. Like, so I'm not going to say none of, they had no rights, but the rights were kind of like dependent on your area and what people thought of you and the color of your skin and your education level. It wasn't just women.
Right. Yeah. I'll just save it.
Yeah, that's okay. We got room at the end. It's also important to note that whenever the U.S. was first formed, like, not all men didn't have the right to vote. Only land-owning white men. And it was a certain amount of land. I don't know how much land, because I didn't look up what acreage or anything like that. But it couldn't
really
just
shirking your duties, Rachel.
There's 7 pages of notes and an extra sticky note. There's so much on this. But basically, like, if you're just a guy who's like, well, I don't want to live with my dad anymore, I'm gonna go work at my uncle's farm, you can't vote. You own nothing. You'd get no say because you own no land, which I kind of sort of get the logic of, in that the people who own the land should control what's done with the land. But like I said, you can live on land and not own it. Well, anyway, so eventually this becomes a states' rights issue, as after the United States is states instead of just the new colonies, right? So, for example, all adults in New Jersey who owned acreage at all could vote from about 1790 to about 1807. So it was like, it didn't matter. If you owned the land, which women usually didn't, but if they inherited it from a father and didn't marry, they could own land, right? Like, it could happen. Around 1838 was when this popped up, but in Kentucky, widows or female heads of household, so if your husband was dead, or, again, possibly if you never married and inherited the household from your father, you could vote. But you had to own property that was taxed. It couldn't be non-taxable property, which, to my understanding at the time, meant it had to be like in a township or corporation. It couldn't be like free land. But that's just 2 examples. Like I'm saying, it was kind of dependent on where you lived, what the rules were, and some of these was like you could vote in, like in Kentucky, it was you could vote in Kentucky elections. You couldn't vote in all elections.
Sure.
So it depended on that. So many notes. I'm just like, there wasn't an exact time frame. It wasn't like in 1856 women decided this is BS. It was like a slow boiling pot.
Well, I mean, they're coming to the realization, they're like, why is it only these women, or why no women in this area, or...
So what kind of popped off was, I don't know how much you know about the Gilded Age. Like, well, it's your favorite book's written in it, and that's why I thought you might know a little bit about it.
Okay, I know that much.
Okay, so like the very late 1800s, like 1890, 1880s to or let's just say like 1905-ish. Excuse me. We had a lot of wealth that was in not a whole lot of families, like compared to the whole population of the United States, but a lot of families compared to, let's say, the wealth of Europe, because we had, what am I trying to say, like,
well, the wealthy families were the ones that could come over.
Barons. Yeah. So some wealth came over, but we had the railroad barons, we had the bank barons, we had the iron barons. Like, we had all of these people who had built something, and there was no industry yet, and they were building the industry. We were, like, right at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, where none of the money had been split out yet. So we read that book. Like, you had families who the girls got new diamond necklaces every 3 months, and that was theirs. But you had, for the first time, educated heiresses. So you had these women who had been educated highly, who were thought of as more than normal. They saw themselves as elite. And then they were still just expected to marry this guy. This guy, like, he's just a guy, and I am essentially an American princess. Why would I marry this guy? Like, it didn't make sense. And again, these women for the first time were going to college and educated. Again, elite women, not all.
But. I mean, when you're richer than rich, what do you do with that money?
Yeah.
I'll just waste it on this education.
And I'm not saying across the board, but what kind of flipped the scripts a little bit were these dads were very doting of these daughters and very protective of these daughters. It was the American mindset of, I can do whatever I want, I have money, instead of the old-fashioned mindset of, we will follow tradition and the money will follow us. So it's kind of a different thought process. It's not to say it wasn't felt in Europe. Like, it was the same feeling was happening in Europe, where women were, again, becoming educated, getting power, getting their own voices, and being like, well, this is dumb. Why don't we have equal rights? Why are women so much less? I feel like I'm a person. Why am I not a person? The mindset at the beginning was kind of like, not demanding we want to vote. It was like, we have to be seen as people. And your book made me think of this. The idea of women going out, single women going out as a group and doing activities and being seen as, like, again, they're elite. This isn't Mary Sue on the farm who has no time because she's working. Yeah, they're socialites. But they would go out as a group and go out and be seen in public. And they're like, oh, look, women can be seen. Also, they were then objectified more. But, like, the idea was basically, if they're not at home all the time, they could start to be seen as part of society and not just baby making machine. And like you said, socialite earlier, a lot of the social aspects of a socialite are raising money for orphans and the less fortunate.
Being seen.
Yeah, and
out in the world.
And giving papers and going to listen to intelligent conversations. It was a very, like, college-esque vibe at the time. Like, a lot of information was flowing, a lot of new ideas were coming out. Not everyone liked it. What is exactly what you'd expect. Some wealthy men were like, this is stupid, women should be seen and not heard. A lot of poor men were like, well, this is dumb. Like, it didn't,
because if I don't amount to anything, why should she?
Yes. Actually, there was a huge amount of jealousy of, well, why does she get to have more rights than me, who has to work all day? Like, and then the dangerous thing happened where these elitist women were like, it's not just us. It is Mary Sue on the farm. Mary Sue deserves to go to college too. And that's when people were like, whoa, let's not get away from ourselves. Like, let's not talk crazy talk here. You're special. She's not. And then
She is a baby making machine.
Yeah. Things went downhill. It's so complicated because so many things are happening at the same time. So this is happening, and then there's this war that happens from 1861 to 1865, which is known as the Civil War. So this is actually a little bit before the Gilded Age. Yeah.
Never heard of it.
So with the Civil War, we suddenly have this population of black people who are now considered people too, technically.
On paper.
Yeah, like, technically they're people because the government says they are. But they're not really being treated as people in the scope that we would like them to be treated as people, we modern people. So this not weird thing, but interesting thing happened where a lot of the suffragettes were tying themselves with abolitionists. I couldn't get that word out. And they were like, hey, if all of us work together, we can make these white men give us what we want.
Sure. It's like
but
A Bug's Life.
It became kind of like, who gets to win first? Can we all win together? Or are we going to have to be like, well, fine, black men can vote and we'll get our turn. Like, it became like a who, like I said, who
because they're
gets
not willing to turn over everything.
Oh, yeah. I was going to just make a little note because I do have a note on that. Like, a lot of the, like I was mentioning earlier, the socialists and the elite women who were doing this had to be single. Not all, but once you were married, all of your money belonged to your husband.
Sure.
And you technically weren't allowed to sign contracts without your husband's permission. You couldn't have a bank account without your husband's permission. But you could do a lot of this by yourself before you were married with your dad's permission. But your dad
didn't. Loophole.
Yeah. But your dad didn't necessarily have to sign with you. You were just using your father's money.
Which is crazy.
But like I said, surprising amount of those men were like, go get him, baby girl. Not all, but like a surprising amount. And I don't know that they knew that that's what they were doing. Like, I think.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
They're just like, my baby can do whatever she wants to.
She can do no wrong. Also, interesting thought here. So at the time, suffrage wasn't thought of as political, which is crazy to me. but more of like a moral thought. Like, this doesn't need to go through political channels. This needs to be separate, because there was like a very moral like women's Christian for America. Like, there were lots of moral, and they usually were some form of Christianity, clubs for women, and then there were political clubs that women were in, and women were very hesitant to cross into the political sphere. They were really sticking to the moral sphere, being like, this is literally against morals as a people group. Like, as human beings who are alive, we deserve this.
The Bible says.
The Bible doesn't say much about voting. But just some dates for you here. The first women's rights convention was in 1948, which pre-Civil War, basically, by almost 20 years.
Whoa, hold on.
1848.
Okay.
Did I say 19?
Yeah. I
okay.
was like,
No. Sorry.
Whoa.
I do that a lot. About 300 people, women and men, went. It was very unstructured at the time, state level. A lot of it was at state levels. It wasn't like we're the national convention. It's we're the New Jersey Convention for Women's Empowerment League or something. I mean, that's not a real one,
right.
but yeah. There were some women who popped out. There's some names that like I even recognize, like Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cody Stanton. They start working together in about the 1850s to raise awareness. They're writing letters that get published. They're organizing not rallies, but just conventions and speeches that are like, hey, there's no reason women shouldn't have the right to vote. And to be clear, it's like, it wasn't just, hey, we deserve to vote. It was actually a lot of rights that we're still kind of fighting for, where equal pay, equal work, rights in a marriage. It wasn't just straight, we want the rights to get divorced, but like, we want the right to not be abused. I may have written this down somewhere, but I'll share it now. Like, there was a really famous case where this woman got horsewhipped by her husband. She didn't die, but was like horrifically horsewhipped, and she went to divorce him. And the courts literally like looked at her and goes, well, if you didn't want to be horsewhipped, you shouldn't have done something to get horsewhipped by.
Sure.
Like, and she had to stay married to this guy. But they used her as like an example of, this is bad. Like, women aren't property. Women don't deserve to be whipped into submission. Like, we deserve to have at least, again, some autonomy within our own selves.
But it's like, okay, if you're not even aware enough to be like, if we treat things with respect, they last longer. So why not treat people with respect so that they're on my side?
Yeah. Excellent argument. You would have loved the conventions.
I would not have done well in that time.
I think I wrote down a date wrong because I wrote 1966. That's probably 1866. So the Civil War came up, like I said, shortly after or during this, actually. Like, they're actively fighting for women's rights. Civil War pops up, everything gets, nothing
pushed.
really matters at this time except for the war, because that's what wars do. That's so weird. And that's kind of, I mentioned it earlier, when abolitionists and suffragists start to work together, because they're seeing the need for both things. Again, people getting the rights of people. Out of the Civil War, we got the 14th Amendment, which has better verbiage than me, but basically saying that all people of the United States are citizens of the United States, and they're real people. You can't own people, is the short version of it. It's said much more lovely.
Sure.
But this is important, I promise. During this time, in 1955, the Naturalization Act...
19 or 18?
Dang it, 18. Okay. 1855, the Naturalization Act passed, and what that said is, if you are a woman, because that's important, and you marry a man who's not a U.S. citizen, you lose your citizenship, and your children aren't citizens anymore.
Cool.
Yeah, because your tie is now to your man and not your country. They also didn't tell women that that's what that did. They just, like, passed it. And, like, if you're not an educated woman, you didn't read this law.
Well, I mean, news traveled differently then anyway, so it's like, how would you, even if you were educated, how would you have found out about it?
Yeah. So, like, again, our wealthy class, and, like, your husband could then become a citizen, and then you could become a citizen.
Yeah, but you'd lose everything in the meantime.
Yes, and this is, again, a big period of immigration, too. Like, during the Civil War, not so much, but after the Civil War, we had a huge influx during the Industrial Revolution. So there were lots of people.
I mean, the American dream.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there were lots of people coming in that spoke English, looked traditionally American, but weren't American. And same thing that happens now. If you are 2 years old and you're brought over on a boat, this is your country. And I'm not making the argument for that should automatically make you a citizen, but the woman marrying you may not know that you're not a citizen. Mm-hmm. Like, if you've never brought it up, you don't have, at the time, you don't have to go show papers at the courthouse that you're a citizen to get married. But later, this becomes important. So, Civil War, we distract from suffrage. And then after that, the Women's Loyal National League turns into the American Equal Rights Association in 1866, so like right after the war. And that's when Frederick Douglass, who I mentioned last month, hooks up with Lucy Stone and many others, including, like I mentioned earlier, Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Stanton, to continue this on a slightly more political scale because this has become a political issue instead of a moral rights issue. There becomes two trains of thought about this. Do we all fight together, or like I said earlier, do we basically say, okay, black men get what you deserve, and then we'll come back for ours for all women later? Elizabeth Stanton and Susan B. Anthony are on one side, and then the American Suffrage Association with Lucy Stone is on the other side. And this is in our later, like 1870 era-ish. Stanton and Susan B. Anthony said no one gets rights till women do. Lucy Stone is more like, if they get rights, then we have a better chance of getting rights. Like, if we help them, maybe they'll remember us.
And not to be that person, but like, in the time, if you're like, okay, well, white men have this privilege. If we add women, is that going to be white women versus black women, or is it going to be all women? Well, then the black men are behind, and that's just unfair.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, it was that complex of like, so do we just say white women? But then that literally disenfranchises the people that we just gave these rights to 5 years ago. Just to skip ahead, and the 15th Amendment is passed in 1870, and that lets black men vote. So it doesn't matter what they were fighting for. That's how it ended. Was, okay, now all men can vote. Again, the practicality of black men voting, it was on paper. Like, it was difficult for them. It wasn't like...
Yeah, if they showed up to a polling place.
They literally got run out. Yeah, it wasn't good. But there were places where they were able to. It wasn't every single polling place in the entire United States was like that. It was just a lot. Women kind of got a little nervous because then they're like, okay, we helped you guys. You gonna help us?
Well, they have no reason to.
Overall, they didn't. Yeah. Like, overall, they did not. I mean, I'm not going to say that there weren't allies.
Sure.
There were. But, like, as a general rule, they're like, well, now all men can vote, so you guys need to just shut up. Mm-hmm. And let your heads of households take care of you. 1871-ish, give or take, because we've just passed the 15th Amendment, women start to get a real bee in their bonnet. And...
Well, because it's been long enough.
They get mad, yeah. Like, this little...
We said we were going to help you out. We made it
percolating,
happen. Now what?
Yeah, percolating thing starts to become, like, a bigger thing. Like I've mentioned, we're well into the Gilded Age now. Like, we're ready for this transition. Women just start voting. Not all women. Women do it with purpose, knowing they're going to get arrested. Sure. Wealthy women do it on purpose, knowing that they can pay the fines and get released. And then they can sue. And they're suing on the grounds of basically the 14th Amendment saying, hey, we're all citizens, except for some of us who got denaturalized, but that's a different problem. There's no reason we can't. Overall, these lawsuits fail, but if we keep it in the news, we keep it in people's minds,
maybe other people will help us.
The... quote, all persons are, quote, 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 citizens of the U.S., and no state shall make or enforce any law that shall abridge the privileges of the citizens of the United States, which to me reads like we should all get to vote. But anyway, it just shakes things up. We also start to have more movers and shakers than the ones I've previously mentioned. Victoria Woodhull, we should do an episode on her. She was a stockbroker in the 1870s, and she publicly accused the Constitution of disenfranchising women and, like, did it on a very public forum. Sure. And as a educated woman who has a job as a stockbroker, she was, like, the first or second stockbroker in the female stockbroker in the United States. Like, people were, like, rallying behind her. Mm-hmm. But this girl can't keep her mouth shut. And she's like, by the way, this woman who works for the National Women's Association, I think, she's sleeping with this man who's married to this other woman who's in it. Like, she just couldn't, and I get it.
She's trying to,
She felt like it was important to not follow the wrong people. Like, I think she was, from what I could tell, she thought she was doing it with good intentions, but literally every woman's like, shut up, Victoria. We know. Sorry, she was super fun. She was also the first woman to run for president, technically, but she couldn't because she wasn't old enough to be president. She wasn't 35 yet, so she was invalidated before she even put her name on the ballot. She put her own name on the ballot because
she tried.
She formed her own political party to be able to be on the ballot under that political party. Again, super fun girl. I think I may have talked about her once, if I remember correctly, but... She had a great time. But she wasn't the only one who was doing similar things. Susan B. Anthony got arrested in 1872, so about the same time, for voting in the presidential election. She, fun fact, never paid the fine. $100, she never paid it, but she didn't go to jail either. It was more, again, about... She's Susan B. Anthony. People knew Susan B. Anthony. She was part of a very wealthy, well-known family, and she's been loud for almost 40 years at this point. Like, she's not being quiet.
Been loud.
She was actually pardoned. I can't remember when. It was in I think it was 2021, maybe.
Oh, so like super recent.
Yeah, she was actually pardoned by President Trump for never paying that fine.
$100.
Yeah, basically. In 1966, so we're actually going back a tiny bit, but again, same time period, Elizabeth Stanton, which I mentioned, she actually ran for Congress. Again, she didn't win, but the point was she was on the ballot. Mm-hmm. Technically, like, we're putting women on the ballot when women can't vote, but the point is we should be, right? Like, this is dumb. Another super fun girl, 1884, Bovana Ann, I think is how you say it. Lockwood. We took a small pause, so hopefully we didn't lose much. 1884, Belvana, I'm still guessing, Anne Lockwood, first female lawyer. Again, don't know for sure that she's the first ever, but first certified in a history book. She ran for president under the Equal Rights Party. She didn't win, obviously, but it was,
What?
well, I don't want to say the nice thing, because I'm not saying she was scandal-free, but, like, Susan B. Anthony had basically a rap sheet. Victoria's over here running for president under a party she created when she's too young to run. This woman was, like, the first to be like, you should vote for me. She was following the rules. Yeah, you should vote for me. I have a legitimate reason. This party actually exists. I am a lawyer. I know law. I would make a good leader. Like, she had actual backing. And these people got votes, which is impressive, again, because women couldn't vote for them. So men were voting for them. Again, I said this is super complicated, and I'm trying to give, like, the basic version. Lots and lots of stuff happened at state levels during all of this, too. This was mostly, like, on national scales or, like, big newspaper scales, right? And also, during all of this, we're still settling the United States of America.
Yeah.
We're not completely a country yet. Like, this isn't 50 nifty yet. Like, we're, like... I don't know, 38, I don't know. I didn't count.
I was going to ask, but I was like, she probably doesn't know.
I didn't count. Because we had some states starting to be like, well, we're okay with some things. Like I mentioned earlier, Kansas was letting people vote for, or not Kansas, Kentucky was letting women vote for a while. So there was this weird, like, loophole in Wyoming and Utah territories weren't states. So they were territories. So somehow women were successfully voting because they weren't a state. So
they're like, we're going to get ahead of this.
Kind of. Like, they were just like, and again, I'm honestly not clear if it was ever in a federal election. I don't think so. I think it was all on, like, territory things. But I also, this is just an assumption. I think, like I mentioned earlier, it was like, well, yeah, why would we not let our frontier women vote? They're literally out here breaking their backs with us. They're moving the herds. They're with us in the front line, so to speak. Like, the respect for them, I think, was there a little bit more than, like, the socialite women who were delicate flowers on the East Coast. In 1887, though, Kansas City, that's why I got confused, in the state of Kansas, city-level voting was allowed for all women. So, like, that was kind of our first little... Oof, okay, you can vote in cities.
We got it.
That's great. Colorado started letting women vote in 1893, Idaho in 1896. So, like, we're having this go, but a big push on this was the Women's Christian Temperance Union. That was what I was trying to say earlier. it joined the suffragette movement, and this was like one of the biggest women's organizations in the country at the time, and they basically folded down and were like, yeah, okay, we have to get behind this. And in 1870 they joined, and then a bunch of these states followed. Sure. I kind of said that backwards, but this is also, well, we're not quite there yet. This isn't the only time, but we're starting to get rights, so men are starting to push back harder. It's also important to note that during this time period, there's this thing called prohibition. Prohibition was a fancy way of saying we don't think we should sell alcohol anymore because these men become so violent when they're drunk that all of these women keep dying. So a lot of like breweries and rum runners and all of these people whose jobs revolved around alcohol were like, we don't want women to vote because we know they're immediately going to outlaw alcohol. We did.
Don't put that on us.
Yeah, that wasn't directly on us. But that was part of the thought, and honestly, part of it was like women thought, well, they were correct in saying like these men become violent when they're intoxicated, but also that was part of like children's rights, which is what women were pushing for, which the cotton mills hated because they used children, and they're like, if we let women vote, they're gonna start passing labor laws for children.
We're not gonna be able to work these children
to death. Yes, like this was happening at the same time where children were routinely dying at work because we have an industrial revolution where we need all of these workers.
We don't want women in our factories. We want children.
Well, the cotton mills were famous for wanting children's fingers to do dexterous little things and then not caring when they lost hands.
Women, for the most part, also have fairly small hands.
Yes.
I mean, they're not as small. Yeah. I get it.
Little 5-year-old hands picking stuff out. But that was part of the pushback, was like, so you had these businesses essentially against women voting, corporations, I guess you could say, and that's where we see a lot of the advertisements being like, women belong in the kitchen, men belong in the fields, and like women leading men around on leashes being like, this is what happens if you let your woman vote.
The things that really irritate me.
Yes. And then of course, I'm not saying all religious groups, I just mentioned the Christian Women's Temperance Union joined the fight, but a lot of our deeply ingrained religious belief was, well, we simply can't let them have voices. Men are the head of household, is the actual thought process, and therefore men should get the final say. I read so much of, it's gonna destroy the family. Where have I heard that before? Like, I mean, it just kept coming up of we're actually feminizing women and emasculating women, sorry I said that weird, and destroying the family in doing so. And the children will suffer. Who will think of the children? The children that the women want to take out of the factories. All the
children in the factories anyway, so.
Exactly. Also, the South just hated it. They just hated it. They're already upset.
They already had their big loss. They're not ready for another one.
I mean, essentially, yes. And also, a lot of cotton mills were in the South.
Sure.
Not all breweries were, but like crops grew so well in the South, so some of your bigger breweries tended to be there. Like, again, some of this was simply logistical. But yeah, they were very conservative and were very much like, I just no. And then our radical divides became even bigger, where, like we mentioned 20 years earlier, we're like, maybe the men will help us because they knew what this was. No, they don't care. They super don't want their women voting. They don't want your women voting.
They got what they wanted, and that's it.
Very much them versus ours. And I think they probably still felt disenfranchised because they truly weren't voting as a whole. But we weren't alone. Other countries started, like I mentioned. You'll never guess what the first country to allow all women to vote was.
Germany.
New Zealand. 1893.
Such an odd. I mean,
yeah, who would have thought?
Love it.
I would have thought like
when you said
France, like some sort of very
someone
European,
more, like more liberal.
Yeah, but New Zealand's like, no, we're cool with it. There's like 8 women out here, and we want them to vote.
We don't have snakes. We want women to vote.
Yeah. And I mentioned all of these like things, but like I mentioned earlier too, the states were starting to chill more. They were like, we don't hate this as much as we thought we did. It's not awful.
Ruining everything.
Yeah. And we start to hit the 1900s, and we get into a more progressive era. And I do think some of that, I've mentioned so many things that were happening at the time, but some of it was the Industrial Revolution. There's money's flowing freer. People are starting to, like, this is the height of the American dream, right? Like, this is where,
Give it 20 more years.
yes, but this is where literally, if you have a good idea and you're a hard worker, you can make yourself
Make it
middle
happen.
class or even wealthy if the dominoes fall right. But also, we have these different cultures blending. We are a melting pot right now. We are all working together, and yes, that does make prejudices, but it also does make for a strong society too. Theodore Roosevelt was pretty progressive. Like, he was pretty much like, yeah. I mean, he didn't straight up say, like, yes, let's let all women vote. But, like, his policies tended to allow for some of that. Not necessarily. He's like a side note. By 1916, this is actually, like, a political issue that Congress is arguing about repeatedly. I do want to just slide in here. In 1907, the Expatriateness Act continues the Naturalization Act of 1855, and like, if we thought that, hey, we're gonna let these women who are married to non-citizens be citizens, we're like absolutely not doing it. It like doubled down, got even more strict, it even tightened it up more. Page 7. So what did I say? 1916, political issue. 1917. I believe it was Susan B. Anthony. I should have written this down. I think it was. The White House for the first time was picketed by women, suffragettes. They went with their picket signs and their little, I don't know what they're called, the things that go over you when it's on both sides. The wood things.
Oh, yeah.
Like you're a walking billboard.
Yeah, I don't know what they're called.
Yeah, me neither. But they went with them, and they went in front of the White House, and it was literally like, "Hey, Mr. President, we want these rights. We want them."
Mm-hmm.
It failed miserably. Turned into a full-out riot. 200 women were jailed. Very few men were. Yeah. But what actually interestingly happened was these women decided when they got arrested that they would go on a hunger strike. And instead of backing down or offering terms, the jails, forcibly force-fed them, which is now considered a form of torture, with the way they were doing it. And that got into the press. And then public opinion turned a little bit. They're like, what do you mean you're holding down women and shoving tubes down their throats in their state of unwellness and unable to do anything and leaving horrible bruises and knocking out teeth? Like,
why are they so weak?
Yeah. So that they had, we have that little bit of umph. And then that was in January. And then in April of 1917.
It's interesting that it was in January. I just want
to point that out. It was almost like once they switched presidents to Mr. Wilson. Yeah, maybe. Anyway, April 1917, World War I, or the Great War, started. Guess what we asked women to do? Join the workforce.
Yeah.
Because
you got to help our men out.
Yeah. This is the Great War. We all have to do our part.
We want you in those factories now.
Yeah.
We don't need the children. We got to have you taking care of them everywhere.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's exactly what we had been trying to do for 50 years. We're like, we want to be seen as part of the world. And they were like, can you please be part of the world? We really need you to. We don't have enough men. We just don't. And we did. We did great as a whole.
Go Rosie.
Go Rosie. Like, going out there. But then, as you can imagine, they're like, hey guys, we're going to need some rights.
Before the men get back.
Kind of, sort of. So actually, the very first attempt to pass what became the 19th Amendment happened in 1915. So, like, this is 2 years before. Failed. They tried in 1918. It failed in the Senate. And then in February of 1919, they tried and failed again. It passed, I think, in see if I can remember this. No, it failed again in February of 1919. In May of 1919, they did a special congressional session because they were really wanting to get this out. They really wanted to get it out before the elections in November for 1920. Basically, finally, 1919, we passed the 19th Amendment. So, for the 1920s election, for the first time ever, women can vote. If you're a citizen. It's the only caveat in there. Which is still true today.
They got something.
Yeah. Side note, though. We still have all of these disenfranchised women who have married immigrants who didn't know that they couldn't vote. And for a long time, Native American women couldn't vote because they weren't citizens, so they had zero rights, but they live here.
They were here first, but no.
So there was actually a caveat to that. If you moved away from your reservation and renounced your tribal heritage, you could. Or if you if you did all that and married a U.S. citizen, you could too. So, I mean, it wasn't just like no, but if you wanted to, you know, respect your roots and your culture and stay with your family, then nah. So, we won! Yay, go us! It wasn't like that.
It's still not like that.
No, it's not. So, literacy was a huge problem. Women still weren't being educated to the same level that men were. So, like, in theory, a woman could absolutely turn up to vote and go, I can't read this ballot.
Somebody tell me.
Yeah, and they wouldn't do that. Also, non-English speaking, even if you were a citizen, if you didn't speak English, because that happens today and it still happened then. Like, you could be in a subgroup where your parents came from Italy and you lived in an area of New York that they only spoke Italian and you never learned English because you didn't have to, because you were so protected by the subculture around you that you simply didn't have to know it and realistically, if you were going to get married at 16, didn't matter because you were then going to be in a household that was Italian. I mean, it did matter, but it happens. Also, Spanish speakers. Since we're talking about this, we now have New Mexico in the United States. New Mexico was Mexico. The amount of Spanish speakers was crazy because that's the language they spoke 2 years ago whenever they weren't a U.S. state. They were just a territory.
Fun fact side note, when I went to the DMV yesterday, they had a list of like all the different languages that they can provide their testing in, which I was unaware of. I was like, way to go, Robinson. Like,
that is really good. Well, and I mean, I actually got an argument not that long ago with someone about this, that you can be fluent in English and know how to read street signs and know how to read the laws in it and not be comfortable taking a test in it.
Yeah.
Or option 2, speaking versus reading is not the same thing. You could be completely fluent in a language verbally and be like, I don't know how to read this. My Spanish is not good, but my written Spanish is really not good. Like,
I really thought you were going a different direction. I was like, really? And then I was like, you said it. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, this has just always been my opinion. If I went to Mexico and spent 8 months, I'm never going to sound like I belong there, but I'll know what they're saying.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I can read a book in it. That doesn't make me...
Especially because pronunciation is so different depending on where you are.
Yeah. Not subcultures, but like, areas, accents. Boston accent is not the same as a Minnesotan accent. Other issues that women were having was they had character tests in some places where you had to be of a certain moral value before you could be allowed to vote.
I mean, in theory, that's a good idea, but like, what?
Yeah. There was also a poll tax, which was legal at the time. A poll tax, if you don't know because it's now considered illegal, is money that you simply had to pay regardless of your ability to earn that money to vote. And it was just across the board. It is now illegal because that's stupid.
Well, and somebody could give you the money to vote for them. And
well, no, it wasn't even that. It was like just to be able to register to vote. It wasn't free.
Right.
Like, it didn't matter who. So, like, if I'm married, my husband won't give me money, I can't go vote. Or I'm poor and I don't have the money because then my kids don't eat. I mean, there is the potential to buy votes, but that exists without a poll tax. And then, of course, there's race. Black women technically can vote now, but, like, they're not letting black men vote. There's no way a black woman's getting through that without dying. It got better. It just took a while. Women were made citizens. All women who were born in the U.S. were made citizens again in 1940. So the Denaturalization Act was basically, or Expatriation
so
Act.
1940.
1940 is when they were basically like, this law is stupid, and they allowed women to get back their naturalization. Again, if they were born here, they could simply have it back. And your kids. There was some caveats with the kids.
I'm sure a lot of that was trying to rebuild morale of the country, though.
Oh, yeah.
In the
This is 40s, so keep in mind what else is happening.
Yeah.
Yes, there's another war happening. A lot of the issues that I mentioned earlier were fixed with the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which basically said let all people freaking vote. It also made poll taxes illegal.
But also, like, 65, that's insane.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because our parents were alive.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They weren't quite of age to vote, but they were getting close.
Yeah. Your grandparents were... My grandma was in her 40s. Like, which she would have been allowed to vote. I just know she could have because I know her status. But, like, it's very possible that she couldn't have. I mean, I think I've mentioned it before. My grandmother just had a unique set of circumstances that made her an educated woman. The Voting Rights Act really is what actually made all of our disenfranchised populations able to vote in equal parts. And it wasn't like 1965 happened and it magically fixed it.
Sure.
Women did not vote in the same numbers as men until 1980. We weren't essentially basically 50-50 until 1980. So it took another, 15 years? But the trend of women coming out in the same numbers as men, it has continued since 1980. There have been dips, but it's never fallen off enough to be significant. It's never been like enough of a problem that something has happened. I wrote this in here, and I'm going to go ahead and say it. Because it was...
We can always close it.
It was noted in the actual articles. I knew about it anyway. In the 2020 era, there has been a notable pushback against women voting.
Wonder where that came from.
Due to the rise of Christian nationalists who believe that the man is the head of the household. I don't know if you remember me saying this earlier. The man is the head of the household, so there should be a household vote. One vote for each household. That man decides what's good for his kids and his wife. I'm not saying that people in political power believe this, but people in political power have said that they believe this. It's also, I'm going to just throw this out there. It's worthwhile to know. I think I've mentioned it on the podcast before. Maybe I just mentioned it to you. There's an act on the floor of this Congress. It's not past Congress yet, called the SAVE Act. And in the SAVE Act, it requires voter IDs, which there's an argument to be made that voter IDs could be a form of a poll tax because no place in the United States can you get an ID for free.
Is this different than a voter registration? I mean...
Yeah, so it's a physical ID, a photo ID.
Why?
So that way non-citizens can't sneak in. But here's the caveat. A non-U.S. citizen can have a driver's license, right? So for the SAVE Act, a state ID is not adequate. You have to bring in your state ID and your birth certificate. Here's where we disenfranchise 60 million women. Any married woman's ID is not going to match her birth certificate. So she then needs a third type of ID. The only thing that will do that, it's not a marriage license because a marriage license is considered a state level ID. You have to get a passport, which is between $100 and $180 depending on what kind of passport you're getting. Poll tax. You're saying you have to go through the government to get this ID that you have to mail in and pay quite a bit of money for before you can vote.
Slightly related. I don't know how many times at the 2 locations I went yesterday for this driver's license. This is your maiden name? Yes. You've never been married? No.
This is your only name.
This is my birth certificate. It says my name. Here's my ID. It says my name.
Yeah.
They're the same.
And I do understand that it is confusing because women change their name. We could just not have women change their name. Option 1. But, like, the option to fix whatever is wrong with the voting system, by the way, in the research I have found, it's less than 100 cases of fraud in the last, I think it was 8 years. So we're not actually talking about a real problem, but we are talking about...
It's not make or break for the polls.
We're talking about only allowing non-married women to vote, which simply doesn't make sense. But again, if we believe...
Something I get that you don't.
Yeah, congratulations. I have a passport. For now. Boo. For now. It expires next year. But, like, it just doesn't... I guess the logic of if you're married, then your man should vote for you. But if you're single, I guess you get to vote. But the logic isn't there. The reason I bring it up is the SAVE Act got completely knocked out last year, and it's come back with friends, and we're not happy about these friends. Realistically, it probably won't get off the ground just because it's incredibly unpopular because people have read through it really easily because it doesn't have very confusing language. It's pretty much out there. Like, you need a federal ID to vote, but we're not going to provide you a federal ID. Like, that's the long and short of it. But the point of the story is, in 1919, we were having a very similar conversation to what I'm sitting here having today. And I don't know about you, like, it blew my mind that it took basically until 65 for women to feel confident that their vote was heard. 1980, before they were showing up in the same numbers. Even as a child, I literally never thought it was weird that I voted. Like, that my mom voted. She took me with her. And I stood in the little area. I wasn't a wanderer, but I was a nervous child. So I just stood with my butt against her legs in the little voting booth while she did her thing. And I never questioned, like, why is my mom doing that?
Right.
Like, this sounds weird. My dad traveled for work, but, like, I never saw him vote. I assume he did. But I went with my mom to do it, and I never questioned it. And I never questioned that I would get to do the same thing. Because she explained it to me in a very basic way. I'm voting for the next person in charge. And I'm like, cool. That sounds great. Can't wait to do that and get my sticker. Like,
yeah, stickers. And when I was a kid, they gave us candy bars.
They gave us cookies because we voted in Stoy. So,
well, I voted just that corner
well,
before
my point
the bridge.
Was, like, Stoy has like 8 people, so someone made cookies. Like,
right. But what I'm saying is, so you're at my parents' house.
Oh,
you're going to that bridge, that
yes.
tiny little building on that corner.
Yeah. So they needed like 17 candy
yeah.
bars. Yeah.
So now it's at the hall, but you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't vote there either. No, I go to the courthouse. But the point of my story is, it's just
insane.
It's insane that anyone's being like, I don't know if you guys are capable of. Yeah, I'm capable of doing this. I actually do research for elections, and I'm like probably the only person who does.
I usually take like a questionnaire thing.
Yeah, not last year, it was actually the primaries, so however many years ago, that was 6 years, I went on like a deep dive and actually accidentally figured out what some of the candidates were doing before the job that they were doing before they were candidates, and I'm like, you guys have weird jobs. I think I could do this. Anyway, go suffragettes.
Yeah. Go vote.
Boo Christian nationalists who don't believe that I deserve a right to my own mind, that I can't make my own decisions.
You made the decision to get married. That's where your thinking ends.
That is true. It has been pretty easy breezy since then. Not gonna lie.
He brought you this table.
He did bring me this table. I brought him a soda earlier, so I feel like it's a good trade-off. Well, and this, my opinion, if you're in a healthy relationship, in theory you've talked about this with your spouse. Like, political opinions are personal, but they should be something that if you're, again, in a healthy relationship, you guys can either agree on or disagree on healthily. But I still get to make my own decision. It's like deciding what I eat for dinner. Like, if I'm simply not feeling green beans, I don't have to eat the green beans. I'm a grown-up. It's my choice to eat the green beans or not eat the green beans. What a weird analogy. So, woohoo, women's empowerment. Keep voting. I would encourage people to vote on every election they can. And
research.
Research.
Do your research, please.
Also, like, friendly reminder, state and local level elections are as important as federal elections, if not more important, because you're voting for the people who affect your life.
You directly.
Directly, yeah. It's a silly little thing.
I'll be honest, I'm guilty of not always.
Yeah, me too. Honestly, like, I'm just like, oh, I forgot about that, and it doesn't matter, but it does matter. I was listening to a murder podcast, and coroners are voted for. And a coroner doesn't have to be a medical doctor to be a coroner. And in my opinion, political affiliation shouldn't matter for a coroner necessarily, but the ability to do their job should. And in this particular podcast, this man very clearly missed a murder. And then they had to fight. If the coroner says it's not a murder,
sure,
you have to start with the coroner. You have to convince the coroner to change his mind, and this man was not qualified for this job. And so, like, they couldn't even get off the ground. And she was murdered. They solved it. But it's like the very first person you talk to, you need that person to be willing to work for you. Even if they disagree with you, on a local level, it shouldn't matter. It should be who is going to help you whenever you need the help, or who's going to help your cause, or who's going to help your family, and not be concerned about bigger issues, because we're concerned about small issues. But yeah, vote, do your research, use your rights. We fought for them. Use it or lose it. Come on. All right, that's all I have for today.
Okay, well, we'll see you guys. Well, theoretically, on Tuesday.
We'll find out.
That's when we release videos. But if nothing else, 2 weeks from now.
I'll be here.
Love you.
Love you.